Come on and say hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Let's give another good God bless you to our sister. Thank God for the ministry of music. Come on. Praise is going forth today. And everything that has breath, praise the Lord. Well, I love the Lord today because truly He heard my cry. Hallelujah. The word says, hymn says, He pitied every groan. I love the Lord because He heard my cry and pitied every groan. Long as I live and troubles rise, I'll hasten to His throne. I just wanted to sing that to encourage your heart today before we hear the word. Certainly, the ministry of music has gone forth today, and we pray that your hearts have been touched and encouraged. So I don't want to stand before you long. I'm looking forward to hearing the word. Jesus said, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. So I've been asking the Lord just to help me to love Him better. To help me to love Him better. Because the more that you love Him, the more you'll want to serve Him. And I want to serve the Lord. So I'm asking Him for a deeper yes, to deepen my love and my commitment to Him. And here at the beginning of 2008, and one of the ways I think that is done best is when we just meditate on how good God has been. You think about how much He loved you and how He died on the cross for you. And if He didn't do another thing, He just saved your soul, but He keeps on blessing you. Hearing your cry, catching your tears in the midnight hour. I can tell you can depend on Jesus. So if there's anyone here standing on the outside, on the edge, on the side of maybe, let me tell you, you can trust in Jesus. I'm a living witness that God can be your best friend, ever-present help in your time of trouble. That's why I love the Lord. I can't tell you how many ways He heard my cry of my soul, my heart, my mind. He pitied every groan, and that's why long as I live, whenever
know I would have a right hand on the left side because I got one on the right. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm going to have you come at some point because I would love to hear you. I would love to hear you. Love to hear you speak. This morning I want to talk, or this afternoon I want to talk to you very briefly. I'll try not to be long-winded. Amen. What is your relationship status? Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. We read this morning from the book of Matthew, and the 14th chapter says, you are the light of Christ to the world.
Yeah.
A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but you put it on a lampstand, and you give the light to all who enter the house.
Oh, yeah.
Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good deeds and moral excellence, and recognize and honor and glorify your Father who is in heaven. A footnote to that, in ancient times, salt was used as a preservative. And I believe that followers of Christ are to preserve both the gospel message and Christian values in a secular world. Amen, somebody? What is your relationship status with Jesus? Is it committed or is it convenient?
Come on.
That's what we're going to talk about.
Come on, talk to us.
Is it committed or is it convenient?
Hallelujah.
We're in a social media age, and we are very quick to post everything that comes to our mind for the world to see.
Yeah.
And often one of those things that folks will look at and talk about is when you make a change or post your relationship status. Some of us are dumb enough to post something so silly that says it's complicated.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Talk to us.
The establishment of a long-term relationship between two people is similar to that with our relationship with Christ. So we're going to break it down and we're going to talk about stuff that's relevant to right now. Is that okay? In the first phase, there's a time of getting acquainted with each other. This is the time where you quickly decide how to close, how close you're going to get, and how close you're going to allow this person to get to you. You look to see, do they have the potential to become something more? And oftentimes you'll start dating without a commitment. Dating is the second phase of development of a relationship. Dating, and during this phase, you're investigating this person to determine if the relationship will end here, or if things go well, will they move on? Will we move on to the next phase? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Today we're talking about the third phase, becoming a couple. And I have to tell you, I had already had this kind of put together. It wasn't specifically today for what's going to happen after service. So you see how the Lord works. Today we're discussing the third phase, becoming a couple, making the decision to become a couple. And only dating each other requires a commitment. This is the first real test of a relationship, because it's going to determine your level of commitment to one another. And this is where we get in trouble. Am I right? We say that we're committed to one relationship, but we find ourselves not being able to say no to other things. This is also where we get in trouble in church. Come on now. We're committed to a personal relationship with Christ, but we find ourselves unable to say no to other things. What is your relationship status? Is it committed or is it convenient? Let's look at what happens when two people decide to become one. You have to make a commitment. Now, you've met that person, you've gone on several dates, and at some point, both of you decide that you only want to date one another. This decision came after maybe you saw them with someone else. But whatever happened, now you want that person to be only yours. You get to the point in a relationship that requires both parties to commit to one another. The word commit is defined as to bind each other by a promise. bind each other by a promise. What is your relationship status with Jesus? Are you committed? That means you're binded. You're bound to him by a promise. So by making a commitment, you're binding yourself to another person for a particular time period, only spending time with them. Your former boyfriends and girlfriends should not have the same influence over you that they had when you were together now. Are you following me? Ask yourself the question. Look at your relationship with Jesus and ask yourself, do the former places, do the former people, do the former things still have the same influence over me now? What is your relationship status? The first commitment that must be upheld is that you have to be with one person and one person only.
That's right.
You cannot straddle the fence and be committed. You cannot have one foot in the church and one foot in the street and be committed.
Come on. Preach.
When you commit to one another, one relationship with a person, the cost increase.
Yes, it does.
Now you're giving more of your time. You're giving more of your mental capacity. You're giving more of your attention and more of your finances towards this relationship. So shouldn't the same thing be true with your relationship as it pertains to Jesus? You should be giving more of your time. You should be thinking more about him. Your finances should be maintaining the house. Right? You should have a mindset. How do we strengthen and build the kingdom? While you're casually dating, you may have given a thought to buy a gift or two out of the blue, but once you become committed, now you purchase gifts for any kind of reason. First month together, and don't miss that one, or you're going to have a rocky relationship. Women track things better than we do. Do you know what we did this day last month? If you don't know, you had best be quiet. Just shake your head and give a one of these, a yes, no. First anniversary, the please forgive me presents after you have messed something up. Your discussions begin to be deeper about life. Right? You start talking about the future instead of the right now. Then you start talking about marriage and children and finances and a home. You begin to get an understanding of who this person is by having a deeper discussion with them. If you want to know who Jesus is, you've got to talk to him. If you want to know what he stands for, you've got to read his word. You know, folks will stand up and they'll say, I said to the Lord, and the Lord said to me. Okay, I have not yet had that experience. I've got to dig for stuff. And I've got to study, and I've got to learn who he is. We don't all have a gift where we can just say, hey, Lord, and the Lord says, oh, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes you've got to study something. If you don't study it, you can't defend it. If you can't defend it, you can't live it. If you can't live it, you have no purpose. You're ineffective. You're not building. And our purpose is to build the kingdom. Amen? But in order to do that, you have to have a relationship. The investment of mental capacity triples when you commit to one person. That's a scientific fact. You begin to bring that person around to meet your friends. You bring them down, bring them around during holiday times, dinners, family get-togethers. Unlike when you were casually dating, when you wanted to keep them on the side because you didn't want them to meet the other person on the other side. Amen, somebody. Don't act like y'all don't know what I'm talking about. Then you begin using terms like boyfriend or girlfriend. The same thing comes with our commitment to Christ. You got to start bringing them around, folks. You got to start letting them know this is my friend. This is my Savior. This is whom I believe in. This is what he's done for me. And this is what he can and will do for you. The real true test of a commitment comes in two ways. The first is when somebody you truly loved comes back into your life. Come on, somebody. Have you ever noticed that when you finally make a commitment to somebody, the other folks come back up out the woodwork? Have you ever noticed that when you commit to somebody, now people start looking at you that weren't looking at you and talking to you before? Did you ever notice something simple, that when you buy a new car, then all of a sudden on the street you start to notice all the other cars that look like the one that you just bought. But before you bought it, you never noticed them before. Am I right about that? All right, now the same thing comes true. First boyfriend or girlfriend that you ever truly loved but never fully got over. When they come back into your life, the old flames that you never let die begin to burn again. You missed that. Old flames that you never let die begin to burn again. If you refuse to let go of the things of the world, you will cause unnecessary conflict within your relationship with Jesus Christ. Stay with me. If left unattended, those flames will lead you to violate your commitment. The second wave comes when that person that was always just out of reach finally notices you. This isn't by mistake, it's by design. This is kind of how that goes. Amen. You know, it happens in that way. When the person you've always dreamed about is now ready to explore a relationship, if you're not careful, you can forget the commitment that you've made to someone else. When you're striving after something in the world, and it's always been just out of your reach, then you commit to Christ, and all of a sudden, the opportunity presents itself. The question is, what is your relationship status? Is it committed, or is it convenient? There's been many great relationships destroyed because an outsider wanted to test to see if they could break you up. Do you know that when you're happy, other folks who aren't happy want what you have? So they throw a wrench and a rock at you, trying to break your stuff to see if they can have your acceptance. Amen? You have to stay committed. And the same thing comes when you come into the house and you link up with Jesus. The folks on the outside are going to want some of what you have. They're going to try to make you doubt it. But if you know who he is, the old folks used to say, you can't make me doubt him because I know too much about him. The only way you can know about him is you've got to study. You've got to learn about him. Sometimes people will question your commitment. They think that you can do better. That why are you at that church? You can do better. Why are you playing over there? You could play over here. Why are you serving over there when you could serve over here? They question your relationships because they're not confident in their own.
Amen.
You have to know in whom you believe. Yeah, I think we're going in another direction here, so just bear with me. Matthew chapter 9. I think we can wrap this up.
Talk to us. Praise his name.
Bless the Lord.
Let's make it more simple. Matthew in chapter 9, the 9th verse. Jesus went on from there. They saw a man called Matthew sitting at a tax collector's booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." He got up and he followed him. And then it happened that Jesus was reclining at the table. Didn't we talk about that this morning? He was reclining at the table around tax collectors, and sinners were coming and they were dining with Jesus. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said, "Why is your teacher sitting and eating with tax collectors and sinners?" And Jesus heard this and he said, healthy people, they don't need a physician, right? But those who are sick desire compassion and not sacrifice, for I come not to call the righteous but the sinners. So what we're saying is, in order to understand the Pharisees' point of view, you need to know a little about tax collectors.
Come on.
How do you feel about the IRS? Anyone been audited ever?
Come on, talk to us, man.
During the New Testament, they were viewed as traitors. The story of Zacchaeus, he was a chief tax collector. From Luke chapter 19, when he accepted Christ, he gave half of his wealth to the poor, returned fourfold to every person that he had taken from. They were so despised. Why do you think Jesus would have a member of his team who was a tax collector? But he chose Matthew. This is a relationship. This is a relationship. We're talking about relationships. Tax collectors they were despised. His ministry speaks to the commitment of his relationship with Matthew.
Come on.
Matthew was the most to gain in this relationship. Let me tell you something. Your relationship with Jesus, you're the one that has the most to gain. Not Jesus. He got everything
Come on.
already.
Come on, talk to us.
It's us that has the most to gain.
Yeah, come on.
We choose not to walk in the blessings that God has for us because our attitude often prohibits us from walking in what God has really for us to do.
Come on, preach it.
Matthew chosen to walk with Jesus while all the time knowing what he has done to his fellow Jews. The point of that is God can and he will use anybody.
Anybody.
Amen. So don't hang around people who remind you of your mistakes. Don't hang around people that tell you you're unworthy.
Come on.
Don't hang around people that tell you you are unworthy to walk in God's blessing.
Come on now.
Because the truth of the matter is, the word says that we're all like filthy rags.
Come on.
What is your relationship status? When Jesus called Matthew, Matthew did several things. He committed to Christ.
Yeah.
When a person is committed to Christ, you leave
He leaves.
everything else behind.
Preach it.
Because he has everything that you need.
Preach.
The first thing he did was he left his job.
Yes, he
He
did.
left his previous life and he began to follow Christ.
Yeah.
He was never, ever a tax collector again.
Come on
When
now.
you come committed to one another in a relationship, you need to choose to walk away from everyone in your past and other future relationships that will cause you to not focus on what God has given to you. Sometimes we need to wear blinders like they put on horses.
Yeah.
Those blinders are not because the horse is scared, it's to keep the horse from getting distracted.
Come on.
Sometimes you've got to put some blinders on and look directly at what God has for you versus what God is doing for everybody else. Because the blessings that God has for me are for me. They are my blessings.
Come on. Talk to us. Preach.
Blinders keep us focused,
Yeah.
but they only work if you're truly committed.
Come on. Come on.
The second thing Matthew did was he introduced Jesus to his friends.
That's what he did.
Verse 10 says that Jesus having dinner with tax collectors and sinners. These
Yeah.
other tax collectors were probably Matthew's friends.
Yeah.
Some of them were probably his relatives.
Yeah.
And he introduced them to Jesus. Whenever you're in a committed relationship with someone, you need to introduce them to folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're in a relationship with Jesus, you need to introduce him to people.
Yeah.
Simply walking around and telling people I'm saved, I'm sanctified, and I'm filled with the Holy Ghost. That doesn't do nothing. People should be able to see that. But you've got to tell them how you got there.
Yes. Yeah. Come on. Talk to us.
We want our family and friends to accept this person, right?
Yeah.
So we should want our family and friends to accept Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can't evangelize in the street if our own house is tore up. Salvation needs to start in your own home. Clean up your own house first, and then we'll worry about the street.
Come on. Come on. Preach to us. Hallelujah.
When you're in a committed relationship with Christ, you don't mind telling people about it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you have to wear a cross on your chest and display the fact that you're a
Yeah.
Christian.
That's right.
Folks should be able to see that,
See it.
and they should be drawn to you.
Yeah.
And that light that's in you should shine enough that some folks that are in a dark place can find their way by looking at your light. Amen.
Yeah.
If someone has to tell you that they're a Christian, something is wrong.
Come on. Talk to us.
Amen. The same thing is with Christ. We don't have to tattoo, I'm a Christian. We just need to show folks by our love.
Yeah.
Jesus desires that we have a committed relationship.
Yeah.
And he desires for us to be proud.
Yeah.
of him. Amen.
Yeah.
When we're embarrassed about being associated with Christ, we tend to hide a relationship.
Come on
If
now.
you're, can I tell you something? If y'all dating somebody and you won't take her home
Come
to your
on.
mother, you got the wrong one.
Come on.
If you're dating somebody and you can't take him home to your family, you've got the wrong one.
Come on.
Right? There's something wrong with that.
Come on.
I'm going to talk real. You know, a lot of preachers, they put on a robe and they pretend that when they came out of their mama, they came out and they didn't cry. They came out and they said, yes, Jesus loves me. Hallelujah. I'm telling you, I did what I wanted to do. With whoever I wanted to do, wherever I wanted to go, whatever I wanted to say, I did whatever I wanted to do. But I'm grateful that I have a relationship with Christ.
Yeah. Yeah.
because I can look back and think about how far that he's brought me. My relationship with him is not convenient.
Come on.
It's committed. And yours needs to be the same. You need to say, wherever you want me to go, I'll go. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do. Whatever you want me to say, I'll say. Wherever you want me to preach, I'll preach. Wherever you want me to sing, I'll sing. Wherever you want me to serve, I will serve. You need to be committed to Christ and not embarrassed about it or ashamed about it. He said, if you're ashamed of me before men, I'll be ashamed of you before my Father. I'm almost done. Let's talk to me and we'll close it out. If y'all stare at me, we'll just recite Genesis to Revelation and we'll wrap up around 6:30. Come on now, let's work our way through this. The third thing Matthew did was he stayed with Christ. Thank you for coming. Amen. You got my text. God bless you. The third thing Matthew did was he stayed with Christ.
Yes.
Even though his faith wavered from time to time.
Come on, talk
when
to
Christ was taken crucified, his faith wavered. He didn't totally walk away from the relationship though. He stayed with Christ until he died.
Yeah.
Remember we used to sing that song, I'm on the battlefield
Yeah.
for my Lord. That was my grandma's favorite song.
Yeah.
I promised him that I would serve him until I die. But you've got to be on the battlefield. Matthew didn't leave Christ just because he disagreed with something that he said.
Come on.
He didn't leave Christ after Christ got on his case for not doing something or for having little faith. He stayed. What is your relationship status?
Come on.
See, when we get in church and the preacher says something, I used to take it personal. That was my pastor for 22 years. And I used to swear he was just sitting up there talking at me. And I used to get so mad at him. But I sat on the organ and I played. But I used to get so mad. He wasn't talking to me, he was telling the truth. And sometimes the truth will make you curl your feet and say, ouch. But the truth will set you free. What is your relationship status? Are you committed to a relationship? You commit to working through good times and bad times. Shayla and Hassan, you're going to have good times and you're going to have bad times. But you commit to each other and you work through them. Good times and bad times. Without bad, you don't know how good really is. Amen? When you commit to working through disagreements and times when there seems to be a gap in communication, that is what commitment means. You stay. You don't run away. If you threaten to leave whenever something doesn't go your way, then you're not committed. And one day the other person's going to say, well, go. Then you're going to get mad. Spiritually, the same applies to our relationship with Christ. We often want the relationship as long as it's flowing the way we want. We don't mind serving when folks pat us on the back and tell us thank you and call our name out. But will you serve when no one recognizes you? Who are you serving? And why are you serving? What is your relationship status with Christ? Is it committed or is it convenient? Are you committed to Jesus today? What is your status? I ask you that. Just don't date him. Commit to him. Just don't date him. Commit to him. Have you ever been with somebody and they won't make a commitment to you? You won't give them everything that you want to because you're not getting it back, right? Well, that same thing translates over to our commitment to Christ. If you want everything that God has promised to you, you've got to marry him. You've got to commit to it. And if you do, he will open up the windows of heaven and pour out blessings. There will not be room enough for you to receive, but you've got to make a commitment. When times are bad, you need to stay committed. When times are bad, stay committed. When friends talk about you, stay committed. When folks lie on you, stay committed. When relationships feel one-sided, stay committed. When you get tired, that's when you dig in and stay committed. What better relationship can you have than one with Jesus? He is all that you need. When you have Jesus, you always have victory. You always are victorious. You're always on the winning team. But you've got to have a committed relationship. Don't help me out. He is all that you need. Amen. Jesus is everything. It says that He is the Most High. He is the Alpha and the Omega. He is the beginning and the end. Don't talk to me. He is the lily of the valley. He's a bright and a morning star. He is comfort to those that are mourning. He is peace in a storm. He is light in a dark place. He is a friend. He's a mighty God. The Bible says He was the Prince of Peace. He was the everlasting Father. And beside Him there is none. What is your status? If you had a choice on your Facebook page that said in a relationship, it's complicated, single, or I'm in a relationship with Jesus, would you be bold enough to click that tab?
Hallelujah.
Out of the mouths of babes. What is your relationship status today? Are you committed to Jesus? Do you know Him? You know Him. Do you know Him? You ought to give Him some praise. Amen. He's been so good. He's been so kind. He's doing all the work. He still loved us enough to just say, you know what, I'm going to hold on just a little while longer. I'm going to hold on just a little while longer because their deliverance is right around the corner. I'm going to hold on just a little while longer. I'm waiting for you. He says, I stand at the door and knock. I'm not going to beg you. I'm going to knock. And if you open the door, I'm coming into you. And as soon as I come into you, it's already all right. Everything that you need now, I've got it. You hook up with me, all your bills are paid. You hook up with me, I've got you. I've got your back. You need to know me today. Don't just date it. Commit to it. Through the good and the bad. And when you make a commitment, it's a done deal. Amen. What can separate you from the love of God? What can separate you from the love of God? The only thing that can separate you from the love of God is what you allow in your house. When we make that commitment, you've got to leave people, you've got to leave places, and you've got to leave all things behind. Leave the past in the past and move forward with God. Amen.
Thank you, Jesus.
We are pressed for time. The doors of the house are open. If you don't know Jesus and the full pardon of your sins, we invite you to come at this time. Give your heart to Christ. Don't leave this place like you came. That just doesn't make sense. Don't leave this place like you came. Don't put it off for tomorrow. Tomorrow is not promised. If you do not know Jesus Christ, you need to find it right here and right now. He is waiting. He is waiting. He is waiting. If you're looking for a church home and you want to unite with this body of believers, you may come at this time. We'd be glad to have you. The doors of the house are open for membership. The doors of the house are open for restoration. If you have backslidden, you may come and reunite with Jesus. The altar is open for special prayer. If you have a desire and a need, or you have a sickness, or you have something and you need to be anointed, come. Right now, the altar is open. For your privacy and for your discretion, the church cameras will pan upward. The altar is open. Like the song says, I am available to you. you're looking at. They just like the woman who pressed her way. She said, I believe so much I don't have to touch him. I just got to touch his clothes. They pressed their way to the altar, and that is a beautiful thing. Amen? So those that came for prayer, we are praying for complete and total restoration. For those that came, Brother Deshaun, we will get you ready for baptism. Amen. And for Sister Gunn, who has united with this body of believers, we are grateful to have her. Amen. Put your hands together. That's one more. Amen. And for Sister Bass, who has come to unite with this congregation. That's a powerful thing for me. This lady has trained me out of submissive. She has loved me unconditionally for almost 30 years now. And now, see, if you live long enough, I'm honored now that she would come. And now, did you ever think that I would be your pastor? I'm honored that you're here.
I'm glad.
And we're glad to have you. So y'all get ready because we work over here. So we're going to get through. Is that all right? All hearts and minds clear? Let us rise for the benediction. Heads bowed and eyes closed, hands lifted up. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance above you and give you peace and joy. Lord, be a fence all around you and protect you from all hurt, from all harm and all danger. But in case we do not meet again, take comfort. Take comfort, people, and know that we will meet again at the feet of Jesus. But until then, we say, may the Lord watch between me and thee while we're absent one from another. Let the church say amen. Say amen again. Say amen again. Go in peace and go in love. At this time, we're going to ask that those greet one another, and we're going to ask that if you would please leave the sanctuary. We are asking that, according to the church bylaws, that our officers please remain in place. Everyone else, we're asking that you would please just greet one another, and then if you need me, just hold on out in the foyer or down in the fellowship hall. But we've got some folks to marry. Amen.